we have got our first landscape block done. This is all I'm going to do to this, but let me bring you down so you can see some of the detail here, okay? The sky, you remember I did with some lace and just some yarn off of a sweater. I used my lines that were on my thing here. Let's see if I can find number 1. Yeah, there it is. This was the basic layout, as you can see. I'm following these. It doesn't have to be exact, but you know, pretty close to it, so that we can run this all the way through, because we have 3 patterns to go through. So this is my sky up here, and I'm using this blue fabric in the background for the sky. Then I ran these linear areas through the landscape with different things. When I ran this piece, I came back with a little piece of gauzy fabric and put it right on top. That really gave me a hilltop, and with stratified colors that really looked organic, and I loved that. Very simple stitching, just basically getting the overcast stitching or some running stitches. Nothing real fancy on that either, and followed that all the way down. Okay, put a little simple, primitive, tiny house, little tree, little flower, foliage, whatever, a few little French knots, and that was it. Okay, now I want to start the second one in the line here, and it wants to connect to this one so that we can keep it going straight through. So we do not have to have the same fabrics on each thing, but I will show you how I'm going to tie them in together. For instance, this is the second part. Let me bring you back up now. This is the second part, and I've put my 2 little clouds where I think I want them, and I've put the top layer in. You notice it's not the same as this, but I will tie it in just a minute. What I am doing is I am taking and I am making a tacking run, following the line, the next line, so that I can trim that off and I know where I'm going from that. Okay. And that will eliminate a lot of extra fabric, but also give me a guideline to where I put my next layer on, where to bring it up to. I'll have that row of thread there because I cannot see my line underneath the fabric. Well, let me get my needle threaded again. Okay, very close to the end here. All right, now the other thing that this does, primarily it's for a guide, but it does help me in a secondary way, which I'll show you here in a minute. When you're putting fabric that doesn't stretch on and you're trying to do some curves, you're going to get puckers. Puckers are okay. Don't don't fret over that, because we're going to either stitch them in or we're going to cover them with something, okay? So let's take now, we know we don't need this extra fabric over here. I leave extra because I don't know if I'm going to pucker up and pull in fabric all the time, and that leaves me something to play with. Okay, now we have this like this. We know we're going to have a sashing in between, you know, a sashing that is going to connect these, and I'm not exactly sure how that sashing is going to work yet, but I think I'm going to make one that goes in between, okay? Not positive, okay? Don't quote me on that, but I think so. Either that or I'll butt it up just like I'm doing, and then we will use, you know, I like that better, the scrappy, butt up scrappy. Well, that's probably what I'm going to do, but anyway. So, okay, how am I going to work this out? I need to have some continuity between that side and this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to take a little bit of this fabric and run it through. Put it in there somehow, it doesn't matter where you choose to put it, as long as it makes sense with the pattern, okay? So now if that were there and I chose to put let's see, I put a sashing down through there. You can see that it's, well, that, let me put something I don't have to hold. Let me find something of the right, maybe this one. You can see that I don't have, my color is just enough that it's going to bring this pattern over into this pattern. So the landscape's going to look like it travels through, even though I'm changing colors, okay? Now, we're going to do that along on each one just a little. It doesn't have to be a lot. Over here, I'm going to use, let's see, I think I had, yeah, here it is. Over here, I'm going to do a little bit of a play with this other fabric, again, to simulate a heel. I'll move this one. I don't know exactly how I want this to go. It could go high here. I could do it like that, twist it, and run it into this piece over here. Need a little bit more. Need to come and cover that edge. Maybe twist it up there like that. Remember, all this is going to get stitched, so we're not too worried about it. We're going to stitch it in the way we want it. We're going to try to cover that raw edge on that other piece so that it flows, okay? Then even though this piece, oh, by the way, I didn't tell you what I was going to do with that, did I? I'm going to take this piece here, and I'm going to trim it just under that line. of stitching, because that's where my next one is going to come up to. Okay, so that gives you more of a look there. Okay, now we need to pull this one over a little. So let's just take, somewhere there was a, yeah, there it is. I think I just want a littler piece. Wonder if it'll tear this away. Yes, it will. Okay. This one I'll bring up like that, and I will get a different fabric. Let's see. Give me a wider piece here. Okay. This is pretty light. I'm going to keep it pretty light going through. Not the same identical one, but like that. And then I will work this piece over that. Again, showing some continuity if I am okay. I could take it from the bottom up even. I could run it like that. It doesn't matter as long as I am bringing, in fact, I do like that better, as long as I am bringing some continuity around. So whatever you start out with, whatever fabrics you start out with, you want to make sure you have a little bit to keep going through, okay? Now, not necessarily all the way through, but here and there, so that you can continue to make this look like the same landscape. I hope I'm making sense there. When I get this second one completed, I think it will make more sense to you what I am doing here. You can also just plain out repeat a pattern, a fabric. Let's say I want to just plain out repeat this one, okay? That also helps if you just like repeat one every once in a while. It does continue to keep that strata going for you, okay? But like any landscape, everything doesn't stay the same. So it's okay to change it up and around as you go, all right? And remember, again, you're going to have a sashing in here that's going to break it up. So you're basically worried about your connecting pieces. You want to have some kind of continuity there, okay? And it doesn't always have to be on every one, each way down, all right? Sometimes landscape changes abruptly. We don't have to worry about doing it on every one. If you want to, that's fine. But if you don't want to, that's fine. Okay? All right. So I think, let's see. I saw this piece and I thought I liked it a lot. And I thought, you know, I might try bringing something like that in. But I might save it for a smaller layer here. And since I do have more of this particular fabric, I can use that, a little bit of that, but I don't want the whole thing. What do I want to do here? I have some wider yellow. I did that and brought just a little bit of that over to it. Then that would That would make that continuity look good, okay? Then add something on the bottom. So just play with it like that, and just realize that however many blocks you go across, however big you're going to make your quilt, whatever size your blocks are, you want your blocks in the horizontal line to look like one continuous landscape. So play with your fabrics, okay? Just sew one on top of another. It doesn't have to be the entire piece there, all right? Stay with your tone, and if you're going to change it, try to change it a little more gradually. Just different things like that. You'll see more as I go along what I'm talking about as you see how I do mine. And how I do mine doesn't have to be the way you do yours. This is a landscape quilt. Every one of your blocks can be so totally different. It doesn't matter. We're putting a scrappy sashing in between all. That is definitely going to take emphasis off of a lot of just particular landscape, okay? So let's continue going with this, and I'm going to be stitching this one off camera, and I'll come back when I've got it done, and then we will add a sashing to this one, okay? All right. Till then, here we go. Okay, I have finished stylizing, you might say, designing the second one. I haven't sewn, I've sewn from here up except for this little piece. But, and I just decided to throw this little tiny piece in here. Let me bring you up so you can see some of this closer. This tiny little piece just to keep the color here a little bit going through there. All right, just picks it up. The eye picks it up and says, oh, that's the same line, you know, of landscape. So, and you see where I put a different shade here, but I used a little of this fabric right there. I used a different black fabric, but pulled it out over here. I extended this blue into here, okay, different fabric here. I repeated this fabric here. And so now this one is ready to sew, and I will be doing that. Also, you can see that I have gathers in this piece of fabric. Those gathers aren't going to be a problem at all. I'm going to sew them down as I sew. And then I'll be putting a little, probably skip this one and do a little tiny house in the third one. And maybe in the fifth one, maybe 3 across. Nothing, I don't want to load it up with that, okay? This is more about the landscape than it is about the little features, okay? And so, but, you know, that could change, you know me. But I wanted to show you how I got them positioned and laid out, and working one next to another helps to run that across like that. And I'm liking it so far. I'm liking it a lot. It's coming together really well. The sashing and of course, you know, you never judge a project in the beginning. Never judge a project in the beginning. I don't care who's doing it or what project it is. When someone's designing something or creating something or building something, you cannot know the end result. So you need to let them get into it, and you need to see how it turns out. And so never judge something in the beginning as to whether you're going to like it or not, because half the time you're going to be wrong, okay, because you have no idea where it's going in the end result. So anyway, this for those who want to jump in on this and start making their little landscapes. Now, like I said, this takes a little time, so this is not a project that you're going to jump and do and finish in a month. Not unless you're just doing 4 squares. That's okay too. But this is going to be a lap quilt, So I've got a long way to go, and that's another reason why I'm working 3 quilts at once, because I like to switch around, free up my mind. When I come back, then I'm got my creative juices back for this particular project. Okay, let me stitch this, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like stitched. I thought I had my camera recording when I did this section here, when I laced them together, but I didn't. So I will do this several times throughout the whole series for this quilt. But anyway, we just came through flat, and we just worked our thread over the seam very gently like that, lacing it together, keeping it snug but not too tight, not raising the seam itself, but so it's nice and flat, okay, like that. And then, you know, of course, tie it off on both ends. And that puts our 2 sections together. Now, when I've turned it over, I put 2 pieces of fabric down over that seam. One is just an inch bigger than an inch, and then this is just a string. And this is going to be adding to the scrappy feel of this quilt. All our sashing will be scrappy like. And so this, I will be sewing on both sides there and on this in the middle, so you can see how strong that seam's going to be when I get through sewing it. I am going to, I think, use this orange I've got here, because I do have some orange going on over here in this house. And I can just use it. With a scrappy quilt, you can never go wrong with color. Don't worry about mixing up your colors, changing colors, using whatever scrap yarns you have. It's a good time to clear out those bits and pieces, or little, or you just got a little bit on a card or something. Just use up all your scraps. Don't think about color. Just think about thread. And if you do have something particular you want to tie in, like I'm tying in the orange here, then that's fine too. Now, you may not have noticed completely on this when I finished it, I did bring this fabric over. I brought a little bit of this fabric over. I definitely kept the dark black look, but this is a different fabric from this. I brought this on over here. Everything else I changed. And I have a little greeny thing here that's like a plant. That's all I'm going to do on this one. No house or tree, just this little plant looking thing stuck out there in the middle of nowhere. And just an ooch of stuff, not too much. We don't want to overdo these landscapes. We want to do them enough, but not overdo them, because again, it is a quilt. It's not going to be a wall hanging. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do an overlap stitch. Well, it'd be nice if I tied off my thread. And like I said, I'm a little awkward with this finger guard here, this symbol, so please forgive me for that. But I need to learn to use it, because I am doing so much hand stitching now that my fingers stay sore on top of the arthritis hurting them. So, and I get cranky when I get in pain, so you don't want to see me cranky. Stitching here does not have to be ultra close, because for one thing, we're going to be stitching basically this twice by the time we stitch it on the outside and come back and stitch down this one too. Okay. I have quite a few batik scraps, and I'm going to be incorporating a lot of the batik scraps that I have into the sashings. So you'll be seeing a lot of batiks laid down in as the first part of the sashings. They're very colorful. I don't have a lot of any of them, but what I do have I think is enough to use sashing this quilt. I'll bring you down. Okay, where a lot of people say, can you bring us down so we can see you stitch, or can we see the stitches that you've made, or whatever. So I try to remember to do that. Please forgive me when I don't always. I get into what I'm doing, forget what I'm supposed to be doing. Just a simple overcast stitch. You see it everywhere in my work. Running stitch, back stitch, overcast stitch basically are my three main stitches. This is not a blanket stitch. This is just an overcast stitch. Every once in a while I'll throw in a different kind of stitch. For instance, you see the little crossovers, the X's there. I'll put that there because I saw that one time in somebody else's work, and it was simulating a fence line, and I thought, that's cool. That's a good stitch for a landscape. Whether there's a fence there or not, it kind of gives the feel of fence wire, bobbed wire. And out here in the middle of this landscape, in the middle of nowhere, there might be a fence, huh? We don't know. We don't know who lives here. But sometimes I clip a thread when it's bugging me and it's getting in my way. Otherwise, frayed edges, because I work with almost everything as a raw edge. Very seldom do I turn an edge. If I turn it, it's because I am trying to get a certain look. But otherwise, all my edges are raw edges. And I like torn edges and I like frayed edges, especially on something like a landscape, flowers and things like that, because they give you that organic look that you're looking for. And when you're just doing scrappy like the strips and strings quilt, they certainly give you the scrappy look you're going for. Don't worry about perfect meetups, perfect lines, perfect points. Don't worry about that. Like, for instance, this lines up pretty good, this piece of fabric over here. This one lines up pretty good. This one is offset, okay? That's okay, because who knows what's behind here. There might be a humongous boulder back there. We just covered it up, and it just offset this particular whatever is growing back here. That is how nature is. Nature isn't perfect. Nature just offsets itself all the time. So don't try to line up everything just perfect, because really in the end you'll ruin your landscape. It'll be so structured that it won't be interesting. Now, in my opinion, don't ever forget that it's just my opinion. If you like them perfectly straight, lined up, then that's interesting and pretty to you, then that's the way you should do it. And the more color that you can incorporate, the better it looks, and you don't have to worry about color. When you're just using a few colors, color is a real problem because you got to get it balanced. You have to work with it when you've just got a few colors. But when you're using lots of colors, nah, they just automatically blend themselves. Okay. I want to make sure that as I'm stitching, I'm not, pulling this up, so you'll see me stretching them out from time to time. Okay. Now, I will also all the time be measuring and adjusting, making adjustments. If I have to trim a ooch off, or if I have to add a little bit from the back side, pull it apart, add a fill in order to keep my quilt aligned sizing wise, that's what I do. When I get done and the whole thing is finished, tacked and tied and bound, you will never know how I got that quilt to come out to the right proportions and to look good. You won't know all the tacky little things I did. Okay? Remember never to judge a piece of work until it's finished. Don't look at someone start a project and say, oh, that's never going to work. That is not right. You can't do it that way. Don't do that. Wait till it's finished. If it's pretty, if it's crafted well, if you could see something like that in your home, in your life, then that's just exactly what you want to do. Most of us older ladies, we have learned so much through the years from other people, from generations that came before us, from other fabric artists and quilters and slow stitchers and embroiderers and just all those things. Anyone that stitches, we've learned so much from them. And when we incorporate those things, we're not out to copy that person exactly, but we're out to take something we love that they do, tweak it a little, and make it our own. Put it in our style. It's like quilting. I love quilts, but I hate making a traditional quilt. If I ever had to make another traditional quilt, there would never be another quilt in my house. Because I don't enjoy it. I don't like the process. I don't like the exactness, the perfection of it. I don't like it. And so over the years, improvising ways to do things that I like. And that's what everybody else, I think, needs to do so they can be happy with what they're doing. This orange looks good, doesn't it? Playing in well with all these other colors. One lady messaged me and said, oh, that one's going to take a long time. And she's right. This one's going to take some time. There's a lot of work in it. But I've always thought, like I've read before, that anything that you really want to do, time is not a factor. This doesn't have to be done in a day, in a week, a month, a year even. You know? I've had projects I've worked off and on for years, but I never gave up on them. I finished them eventually, and I loved them. When you feel like you want to do a landscape, sit down and do a square. Get one started. When you're tired of it, switch to something else. Then go back when you're in the mood. I think I call myself a fiber artist because, of course, I work in all kinds of textiles. But I do my fiber art the same way I do any other of my painting or my writing. Anything I do, it's motivated by feel and emotion. And so I'm working in the moment. I've got a feeling, emotion, and inspiration. And so that's how I get where I'm going. I know what you're saying, but do you know where you're going? Not always, I don't. Sometimes my destinations are quite a surprise to me. But you know what? I never met a destination I didn't like. They all turned out well. Some so much better than I envisioned. Yeah, we've got one side down and going up the other. Now we'll finish this off camera, and then I will be coming back when I get ready to start my next block 3 and 4. Remember to do whatever size square you want to draw you out the pattern that you want to follow. Don't make it too complicated. Don't put too many lines in. You may want fewer lines than these. But this will be half my quilt in width. Okay, just right here. Then I will start with block 3. I will trace it and make a mirror image of it so that when I lay it in here, it connects these right here. Each one of these I will make a mirror image of, and I will repeat 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. And this whole thing will run, and the end will be just like this end. Does that make sense? And so that will keep a continuity all the way across it. All right. We will have basically 2 hills and 2 dells when we get through. Okay. A dell is a little hollow, hill and a little hollow. All right. I will be taking you along with me step by step as I go along, just like I'm doing in the strips and strings quilt. Now there are 3 quilts to choose from, or jump in and do all 3 this next year with me, whatever your lifestyle allows you to do and your supplies allow you to do. All right. Till next time, you know the drill. Let's all stay very scrap happy. Hello, and here we are again. I have finished the second square for this landscape quilt, and I have begun to put the sashing on. Now, you watched me put this one together, and I just finished sewing it. Let me bring it up and let you look at some of the stitching closer. You can see that it's very simple. Overcast, running stitch. I did a French knot or 2, and that is it. Okay, same way over here on this one. Very simple stitching. Add stitching where you might need it. You notice I've got a lot of stitching in there. This is a landscape, so stitching adds texture. It adds that organic feel. You cannot overstitch in the sense of, adding stitching where you want to and need it. You can add embroidery stitches if you like. It's all up to you what you want to do with your landscape, okay? Now, I forgot to photograph how I put this here, but I am attaching this exactly the same way that the strip strings quilt is attached. Simply laying them down, bringing them together flush, not squinching them up, not making a raised seam, and then just simply taking our needle and running from one side to the other, bring it up, and again, and doing like a whip stitch that laces the pieces together, okay? Gently do that all the way down, secure it on both ends. Now it's a nice feel there. It's totally flat, so nobody is going to know that that seam was there just by feeling, okay? And starting out, there's no adjusting but we will adjust as we go, because being scrappy in the sense that, you know how nothing comes out exactly squared and it'll wonky doodle on you. Well, we'll be adjusting for that through our seams as we go. And I'll be showing you all that as we go along. But this is row 1, column 1 and 2, okay? Remember, we're going to do, at least I'm going to do 6 squares across and 9 squares down. Now that's my intent right now. That gives me a large lap quilt of about 36 by 54. All right. Now, I'm starting the sashing on this, and if you can see, I've got this fabric, and it wasn't exactly cut straight. Remember, there's nothing about perfection in this. We do it well, but we don't bother with perfection. This is scrappy quilts, all hand sewn. So I can use this crooked piece. There's no problem here. It's going to completely cover this seam, which is what I need it to do. And as you can see, my stitching on both sides, making this very strong, okay? And I've got to finish this right here, so let me grab my thread, and we'll flip this upside down. We'll talk about that second square here in just a minute. Of all the quilts that I'm doing in 2025, the 3 different quilts in the Wild and Free series, this one will take the longest, because designing and putting together the little landscapes takes longer than the others. So if you're going to choose just to make one of those quilts, realize that this one will take you the longest. Okay, let's just talk about this second square now. This is going to be 6 blocks across, and each row we want to be a continuous looking landscape. To do that, we have to pull certain fabrics that we choose across all 6 blocks, basically. You might skip one. For instance, this fabric here, I've used it here. I've purposely used it in a place where it connects, and pull it down here. If we look at our pattern, let me get it out here. Bringing this yellow through here, purposely connecting it onto right here just a little, so that your eye says this is the same landscape as you look across. You don't have to do every piece exactly the same, but at least 2 pieces, or maybe 3, whatever you choose to do to keep the continuity. Your brain will just pick up on that and say this is the same landscape, okay? What's very important on this one is the dark line. The dark line is going to have to go all the way across all 6 blocks for continuity. Now, I can change the fabric. These are blacks, but let's say in the next one, I want to do a little lighter so I can put a brown in there, maybe, okay? But it's going to be dark compared to things around it, and it's going to keep that look going. And then I can always slip a little piece of black in there if I wanted to, here and there, to darken it down, however I wanted to do that. So this piece here, it's very light, and I wanted to keep that going, but I used a different fabric right here and then pulled just a little bit of that and laid it in right there. Again, your eye is now following this as one landscape because of these. Same way with this little thing right here, okay? I'm not putting little houses and little scenes on every block. I'm just doing one here and there, but I did slap a little bit of green stuff here. We don't know what this is. Kind of looks like a cactus, but whatever it is, it's a little greenery on this block, and that I'm happy with that. As you can see, I totally changed these down here. Everyone doesn't have to be the same. I totally changed the look of this here. I did repeat fabrics, which is perfectly okay to do that too. I'm using the same basic cloud fabric, and I will do that all the way across. The next row, I may change the cloud fabric because it will be a different, totally different landscape looking, okay? Let's see, I used a piece of woven fabric here, so got away from the cottons, and I went into this woven fabric, and it's giving me some different look here. And I will need to bring that in the next one over just a little and connect that because it's a strong, bold color, and it can't just end in a straight line type thing. Not in my opinion anyway, but we'll see how I do it. Okay, so now when I go, I understand which fabrics basically I want to keep repeating for sure. Now those fabrics I pulled out. It's this fabric here, which is this fabric. I want to keep it going down. This mustardy, yellowy colored fabric, I want to keep that. Some of this black, I want to keep that. And here's some more black. And then some brown that I might throw in that black line. And then this pebbly looking line, I want to keep that across, but the color will change, as you can see. And I can use bits of this all the way through this section, mixing it, changing it here and there. But again, because the pattern is obvious, the pattern in the fabric will keep the continuity going, even though the color changes. Now, what I don't want to do as I go along, because I'm working this quilt, these first 2 blocks together, then I'm not going to go down the whole row 1. I'm going to work the first 2 blocks of the second row, and I will do that all the way down the quilt, all right? And then I will come back and I will start adding block 3 to each of these. I'm thinking that is going to be the easiest way for me to work this quilt and be able to handle it because of it's difficult. Like right now, my hands are swollen with the arthritis that I have in my hands. It's hard for me to bunch up and hold a lot of stuff. So I'm thinking that I can handle it if I do it that way. So, but you can do yours any way you want to. If you want to complete a row and then add a row, if you can handle all that, you just do that. Also remember that I'm doing all this by hand. None of this is going on the machine. So I've got to be able to hold this quilt and work with it at the same time. Okay, because I'm going to be dropping down, I don't want to lose these key fabrics by using them other places, and then when I start across here again, I say, oh my gosh, I don't have any more of that fabric. So what I'm going to do right now is take these key fabrics that I definitely want to work through this first row, okay, and I'm going to put them in a baggie that says row 1. This is going to make sure that when I come back to row 1, I've got the key fabrics that I need to keep the continuity running across here, okay? Row 1. And as long as I don't lose this bag, I'll be good. All right, row 1 is secure. Now, we want to make our sashing a scrappy sashing. So this works well, but it's too plain for the look that I want to go for. So I pulled this piece out. I thought this would sure give it a splash and add it to that scrappy look. All right. And let's see what else I could do here, if anything. You know how I like black somewhere on things. So I'm thinking about, I think I'll do it just like that. All right. And let's see what else I have here. What I might do is put that there and put this over the top of it. Let's just put that in, put that in. We're just trying to get a scrappy, keep our scrappiness going in our sashing, and it's allowing us to use all our little bitty pieces of scraps, which is again one of our goals. Okay. Yeah, I think that looks good. And I will be sashing these as I go. And then when I attach a row, I will sash it across. I will be sashing in sections, but the scrappy way I'm doing the sashing will allow me to attach things easily and overlap. For instance, let's say that I have the second row here. When I work that one across and I come back, there's all kinds of things that I can do to make that continuity of that sashing look good too. Okay, and this quilt, unlike the strips and strings quilt and the strips and strings quilt, I don't want the sashing to be obvious. I want it to be very scrappy and blend in with the entire quilt to where you have to kind of look to find where the sections are. And but with this quilt, the sashing is going to be obvious, and that's perfectly what we want with this quilt, but we just want it to be on the scrappy side. So build your sashing that way. So this is the beginning, all right? I have we'll be working all 3 quilts concurrently. So you know, I will try to get at least 1 video a week on each quilt. I don't know if that's always going to be possible, but that's what I'm going to try to do. That, you know, that's a lot of work. And so, but anyway, I will be consistently uploading these videos, but we'll be working them all 3 at one time so that everyone who chooses one of these quilts can have videos to help them get through these quilts, okay? So now let's put that back. I think I have shown you everything, how to attach your square, how to keep your continuity with fabric going, how to make sure bag your fabric, your key fabric, and keep them so that when you come back to work your additional blocks on this row, you'll have your key fabrics to work in. Okay, you can see that you don't have to repeat the exact fabrics. You can use different fabrics, different scraps. This will eat up a ton of scraps, okay? If you don't have scraps, you'll be scrapping for scraps for sure. So and if you've got bigger fabrics, just rip them into most of the time strips. You know, just this one was a little wider, you know. What is that one anyway? Let me see. Probably nothing much more than, that's say 1.5. That one's 1.5. 1.5 would probably be about the widest. But anything smaller than that works, as you can see. Okay, I'm going to put that in my scrap bag for this row. All right, let's see. Is anything else I can tell you at this point? Decide how you want your little embellishments. Don't overpower the landscapes with houses and buildings and roads and trees and brushes. And in my opinion, this is more about the landscape, but these do enhance it, and it backs up the fact that we are looking at a landscape. But every square doesn't have to have a bunch of stuff on it, okay? And the next number 3, I will have nothing on it. So probably 3, at the most 4 squares out of the 6 along the row will have something on it. And as you can see, that's very minor. All right. But if you look, you see, oh, there's something green growing there. Okay. All right. Like that. Now, also what I did was, let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, here it is. I made up some little elements ahead of time just so I would have something to play with. And this one you saw me make from scratch, okay? But I do have some little houses here made up. Now these, I had some fabric that had some heat bond on the back, and so I just snipped them up, made some little elements out of them, little goofy looking trees, and just some greenery, okay, and some different little houses. Let's see, here's a different one. Okay, but they would work well this size on this quilt, okay? So I made some up in advance so that I could use those along as I went. And I used different weird shapes that I had already. This was already cut. I thought, well, I'll just use that. That'll make a nice little goofy tree. So if you do have any fabrics that you've done a project where you needed a fusible web on the back, and you can just put some of your scraps together, that'd be a wonderful way to do a few ahead of time, and you'll have something to work with there. And I think I'm going to be doing, instead of doing them by scratch like this, I think I'm going to be doing them this way. I get a little bit more detail out of it, and I have a big drawer of fabric that has fusible web on the back, so I have plenty of this to use. Just another idea if you happen to have some of that. You certainly don't have to go out and buy it and make them. You can simply do it from scratch, just like I did this one. That's why I wanted to do one like that for you before I used one of my other ones. This little element here was one that I was already pre-made, and I just slapped it on there and sewed it. Again, let me give you a little bit of a close-up of the stitching. And you can see nothing's fancy in there. Pretty large stitches. Okay. All right. Let's put that back. Don't want to lose that. Now I'm going to stitch this down off camera, and I will be starting the next row, and I will be showing you how I put that together, and what my color scheme is, and what I'm going to use for the sky and clouds and so forth and so on. So when I get to that point, I will be showing you that, so I'm not going to leave you behind anywhere, and we'll be doing this step by step. I am dedicating the whole year of 2025 to doing these 3 quilts for you and for me. So I hope you're going to jump in, and I hope you're going to have the scrappiest time of your life. And if you're enjoying this, if you think it's a good project, you have friends that might enjoy it, groups that might want to jump in on it, please share the videos around with them. Until next time, we're all definitely going to be scrap happy.